How's my hair look?
And rolling.
Oh my gosh, I gave myself a paper cut. Today, we're gonna make this top smaller. Slimmer? I'm not gonna say. Today, we're gonna make this shirt slim fit. Let's start by opening the shirt up. So this is a classic button front, zipper front, but front closure shirt. We're gonna open it right up and look at this section here. This is the back section that leads into that vent we were just looking at from the outside. And this is where we're going to hide a body shaping dart. So what is a body shaping dart? It's generally a loose term for how to get that slim fit without opening any of the side seams. So in a traditional button-up collared shirt, you're gonna have a side seam flat-felled, very similar to this one. In this one, we've got two. So we've got this center, let's call it a gusset. And that's finished with serging and top stitching. Regardless, we don't wanna open either of these seams if we can help it. So how do we get that fit without having to disrupt what's already here? That's where this little technique comes in. So let's start by opening our hem allowance. And that's just to make the dart have a nice clean finish, and then we'll wrap that back up at the end. And we're going to plot out our dart right along this vent. So let me show you what that looks like. We're gonna jump over to the other side here. I have decided that I'd like to take a full 3 inches out. So 3 inches doubled over in a dart is gonna come out to 1.5. So you can see, I'll take this pin out. 1.5 and 1.5 is our full 3 together. Now, when I fold this over and start creating my dart, one of the things that I like to do after I've generally plotted it out is give it a little press on the iron. So that's the crease that you're seeing here. This is me trying to give myself sort of a little guideline because the dart is not perfectly uniform. Again, we're following along this seam that already shows on the outside, and we're molding this dart in a somewhat unsymmetrical way until we get all the way up into the vent to what we would call the 0 point or nothing. So if you look at my colored pins here, you can see how the most is taken out here, and as we travel up towards the broader section of the back and shoulders, that's where we have the least amount pinned off until we finish the dart. Let's flip to the outside so that you can see what this looks like. Okay, hopefully it's already obvious how much of a difference you can see. This is my unpinned original look side coming up here into the vent. And this is my new pinned side where we've got this seam somewhat invisibly just shifting in. Now, I know that you can still see some of that fabric. When we sew that and press that, our goal is going to be to completely hide that underneath. But if I lift this up, look at all that fabric. Let me make a mark here so that you can see just how far we're taking it in. I've got my red mark there and my new edge there. Look at all of that fabric that we're going to be hiding underneath this seam, traveling all the way up into this vent. Then you can just barely see my last pin pinching out very little at the top there. And when this vent is closed, you won't barely be able to see any of it. So this is really cool, and I really like this comparison as well. This is why I call this this is an easy way to do this. This is a really simple, not too tricky, but tricky like you're really tricky. You know tricks in this trade. Way to do this. You can also see where I open that hemline there. That, like I said, we're gonna roll that back up with a nice matching top stitch at the very end to close that back up. That's purely aesthetic. It's just because I think it looks nice, but it will also keep us from getting a a bulkiness. You see how bulky that would be if we left it. Instead, it's going to be a nice clean finish when we're done. We're over here at the sewing machine and we're just about to put in our dart here. I want to show you one thing. We're going to flip to the outside here. We are trying to put our stitching line as close to this folded edge as possible. That's what's going to hide this dart really beautifully. This edge is going to be held in place by the closest line of stitching here to our pins. So we're trying to get as close to possible as we can to this stitching line without going over. If we go over, that'll also make it look funny. So just right next to it is our aim. And I'm going to make sure that my hemline is nice and unfolded and flat, because again, that'll just make for a good clean finish later. And I'm also going to use my fingernails, as always, to feel the edge of that folded seam on the outside as I'm running. That's really going to help me, again, keep my stitching nice and close and even. I would say I'm probably sewing about 1/8 of an inch from that edge, not directly on top of it, but as I'm feeling there, yeah, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. And I might even stop momentarily and look and see how close I'm getting. Ooh. And the camo helps in this case with the pattern. Yeah, I like that. That's going to be close enough. So I didn't even lift my needle or reposition. I just pulled it around to take a look. That's all. And again, I'm feeling that edge underneath with my finger. And remember, this isn't a perfectly straight dart. We're kind of skewing it. And so let's keep that in mind as we're sewing so that you don't go, oh my gosh, I need to even this out. You don't need to even it out. In this case, we're going to trust our pins and we're going to trust that line that we creased in with the iron. See when I kind of trace with the scissors here, how you can kind of feel and see that ridge? Just barely, I know, but it's there. And as I'm doing any dart, as I'm sewing any dart, I'm looking ahead to my next pin because I know that any dart is going to gradually get less and less and less until it runs off of the garment. So I'm always looking ahead for my next pin to make sure I'm aiming right for it. One of the key factors in getting a nice, good, clean dart is a nice, good, clean, straight line. So we don't want to be going in different directions trying to hit those pins. We really want to keep that nice stitching line flowing. And then I'm really going to run almost all the way off and back stitch right there. Awesome. Okay, now I'll give you a little view right there. Oh my gosh, and good color match, so probably actually kind of hard to see. Let's take this over and open it up and press it on the ironing board and see where we're at. We're over here at the iron now, and we're going to press our new little dart in. Just as a general rule, I almost always press darts to the back. There's not necessarily a reason. I just do it because I think it looks clean and uniform. Another thing that you'll notice that's really important, I am not going to serge this out for a number of reasons. One, sometimes, especially with uniforms, there's only so many alterations you can make and they need to be reversible. There's different reasons why, but on the off chance that this is one of them, leave it in. Also, changes in weight for any reason may require you to let this back out later. So in general, this is more of an insurance thing. We're going to leave that dart as it is. And a lot of the time when I'm working with darts, I'm going to leave all of the fabric in as a general rule. So now that we have pressed this and it's looking very pretty, let's flip to the outside and see what that looks like. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, I'm going to get my arms out of the way here. And again, I'm going to bring this other unaltered side in so that we can see the comparison. I love this. I feel like you could never tell that we came in this much, 3 whole inches. And then check this out. This seam right here, this seam, that's a part of the original uniform. This is our dart. How hard is it to tell what we did as opposed to what was already there. Without the comparison, you'd never know how much fabric is hiding under there. How crazy is that? Even as we travel up, here we come to the vent. On this side, we've got this seam under there already. That was already there by design. On our side, sure, our dart continues up a little bit and you can see it, but how could you ever know, right? Really quickly, before I transfer these marks, I forgot I really want to open this. This is that hem again, and really, I personally think this makes a big difference. It's so much cleaner than going like this and just pinching it up. It really is. I think it matters a lot. The presentation on even simple alterations can be so heavily altered, pun intended, by our finishes and the way that we choose to finish it. So sometimes sewing is just all about the stamina. Don't quit till it's actually done. Okay, almost there. And you can see I've got the other side pulled over close to me so that I can take the measurements and transfer them. How I'm going to do that is first, I'm actually going to use my red pen because I'm really happy with the thread color choice that I made. So happy, in fact, that it's kind of hard to see. And I'm going to give myself a couple of red pen marks, again with my heat erasable pen, so that I can take a few measurements and make it easier for me to transfer this over onto this side. Okay, so remember, we placed this dart along that surged seam. So just use your anchor points, whatever your anchor points are, and ours is this one versus this one. And then I'm going to do the same thing where I measure a full 3 inches out from it, and then 1.5 inches for the actual fold of the dart. And I'll show you what I mean by that right now. Yeah, there we go. And really important, when we're trying to intentionally put a dart hidden along another seam, we want to pin from the side where we can see that seam. Because if you'll notice, you see here, if I had sewn from this side, I mean, I'm like really freewheeling it. That's a really hard one to guess at. So I'm intentionally pinning it from the side where I'm going to gauge where to put my seam based on the other seams. So let's come up here to our next mark. Still 1.5 inches. Still 1.5 inches. Now that we've put the first dart in, we do need to make it basically identical. So actually, in some ways, the second dart is a little bit harder because now we really want it to be totally symmetric to itself. So I'm gently creeping up and making these match. After I pin this in though, I'll tell you, I'm going to hold these up next to each other and verify that they look exactly the same. Once we get up into this vent, just like we did over here, I'm gonna measure from the vent up. I'm gonna measure from the vent up to see how far we took the dart. And it looks like we came a full 7 inches. So I'm just gonna throw in, there it is, that little data point. I didn't necessarily mark where the dart is finishing. I only gave myself this mark to say, go 7 inches up. But I do want to keep it very straight. So now I'm gonna get back to matching. Good. Right here at the dart, already down to only about 1/2 inch. So we're really starting to merge off at that point. The more gradual you can make these body shaping darts, the better. You'll notice on our bodies, we don't have hard lines. We have soft, long lines. That's how these darts should be. They're not going to have hard points. They're not going to have sharp turns. Not unless we get into sharper areas, like our armpit, like our neck. Those are sharp points, you can see. But even then, there's still a curve. It's still got a gentle, artistic curve to the body, always. Okay, I think we're just about ready. Now, just like the first dart, I'm going to gently press and give myself a little crease as a guideline. And finally, I'm going to hold this bad boy up to this one and make sure everything looks from my pin to my stitching line like it's correct. Cool. Okay. This would be the stage right now. One dart done, one dart pinned, but still malleable. This would be the stage now that if you were feeling uncomfortable, like you aren't sure, like maybe I took it in too much, maybe I didn't take it in enough, this is the perfect stage to do a second fitting. So if it's for you, throw it on right now, look in the mirror. If it's for somebody else, maybe have them come in and try that on. The reason I say that is because it's not too hard to take out that original dart, but the original dart gives us a really solid, stable line to say this is exactly what it's going to look like. The pinned line cuts down on the amount of work later, but gives us enough of an imitation of that dart to give us that body shape and see if this is where we want to be. Is it enough? Is it too much? Is it just need a little bit more tweak? This is the time to do it. So if you wanted to have another fitting to check, just because again, this is a little variable based on the exact body that's going to be in this garment, do that now. Okay, we are ready to sew in this other dart, so let's jump back over to the machine and finish it up. Awesome. Okay, we have our dart finished, and now all that's left is to roll this little hem back up. So I'm going to carefully press my dart uptake inside of there. And you can trim some of this stuff if this is in your way, these little raw threads. Just get those out of there. Make sure that your edges are even as you're rolling this up. And you'll notice that I didn't take a lot of time to press out this hem. That's because I want to follow the original fold lines to make it as close to the original as possible. The only thing I'm going to do is get some of these loose threads that we had previously seam ripped out of the way. And again, all for cleanliness. Great. So let's start where the stitching already is. And let's move in this direction. And it looks like I'm keeping about 1/8 of an inch from the edge and rolling up a little more than 1/2 an inch. The reason I'm lifting my presser foot is to get over these large humps. This material is a little on the thicker side. You may not need to do that, but it's something that I do to help me jump the hump, as they would say. Yay, gorgeous. And don't forget about the other side. And remember, if you're doing this both sides at once, remember that if you've pressed your dart in, it'll be facing the back on both sides, meaning now that you've jumped to this side, the dart is actually facing the other direction, and that is correct, just as a random side note. Good. And again, I'm not even pinning this. One, because like I said, my fabric's a little thick, but I also just find that feeling it is easier for me. So I'm holding it all in place just with my little fingers. Great. And tucking edges in as I go, making sure all that raw is covered and all of that old thread is peeled off. Great. Great. Yay, yay, yay. I'm so happy with this. I love the way that this is hidden. I love the way that it curves, and I can already tell is going to fit the body really nicely. And I love that we've kept the integrity of the design and shirt overall. You can't even tell that the alteration is done. And really, for me, that's one of my biggest goals. Completely change the fit, completely change the way that you feel and it looks on you, and have it look exactly like the way it did before. I want you to not even be able to guess that I did anything to this, except that it now looks the way that you want. So pleased. Okay, ask me questions, leave me comments, make more requests. Surely this has made you think, oh my God, I wanna know this. Tell me about it. Like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you soon.